lot of Salinas City folk. Yay.
Laura, can you
Yeah.
do me a favor? It's saying my internet connection is unstable. Do you think you can share your screen?
I can share my
Just
screen.
in case.
Yep. Just like Google Meets, I have to hit the share button. Okay. And I chose the wrong thing to share. Let's stop that again. Interesting. Okay. Hold on. Oh. That's why. Let's do this. All right. I don't know about anyone else here, but my district is very much a Google Meets district. So this is very new. So hopefully you should see our presentation again.
Yep, we can see it.
Perfect. Okay. There we go. So Zoom is a different beast for me. All right. So let's go ahead. It's 5:02. Do we have any participants waiting in the waiting room? Let's make sure we get them in. All right.
Good.
Okay. So.
If they come in late, I'll let them in.
Okay. So I guess let's get going here.
All right. I'll go ahead and start. My name is Krista Bradley, and I teach 5th grade. Oh, I skipped you.
It's okay. I was saying, we are such professional presenters here, guys. Such professional ones, but really, we're just 5th grade teachers who like to geek out on technology. So what can we say?
You go first, Laura.
Here we go. I'm Laura Carey. You can find me on Twitter at TeacherLaura. My email's on here just in case you want to get a hold of me later on. And my school is Montebello Elementary. So go Scholars. I am a Google Level 2 certified educator and a cat mom of someone who's thankfully quiet right now. But if you hear meows in the background, he's not being tortured. He just wants attention. I'm also the very lucky recipient of a turtle brought to school, which is now our not class pet. So, who also now has friends called of various types of fish that also, because he was lonely during COVID, go figure. And my regular hobbies really just include lots of gardening and playing with plants, and that's about it. So that's who I am in a nutshell when I'm not teaching 5th grade and loving it. So Krista.
All right. Now it's my turn. Sorry. My name is Krista Bradley. I am fortunate enough to teach 5th grade at Mission Park with Salinas City Elementary. You can see some of my awesome coworkers, not all of them, but some of them in that top right corner. I'm a member of the MBQ board. I am the communications chair. I am the proud mother of 4 boys, ages 13, 10, 8, and 3. They keep me very busy. And some of my hobbies, newfound hobbies actually, are painting and gardening. I didn't realize until March or April that I liked doing those things. So that's what I've been doing with my time. And also I've been 3D printing protective equipment for our ag workers and our healthcare workers during this challenging time.
And I totally forgot to say that I'm also on the board of Monterey Bay Q as the secretary. So small details, no big deal. Okay.
All right, so before we, well, as we started preparing to present this information to you, we thought it would be a good idea to do a poll of some parents of students in grades K through 12 who are non-educators. It was very specific that we polled non-educators because I think we as educators have a different perspective than parents who don't teach. So we polled, I think I ended up getting 57 responses, and these were parents from multiple states. I even was able to poll my sister and my sister-in-law who live in Europe, in Belgium and Germany, and some of their friends. So we got a really wide sample. So let's talk about some of the data that we got from these parents about distance learning. So we ask them, one of the questions we ask them is, how often would you want your child's teacher to communicate with you? And you can see the data here. 91% stated at least once a week. At least once a week, especially during distance learning. I think communication is going to be very important. Go ahead, Laura.
And let's just be thankful that they didn't want multiple times a day, because I don't know how we would do that. And the most common thing for teachers is to just wait until parent-teacher conferences, and that's not even a response that any of the parents chose. So I thought it was really interesting.
Definitely. So on the next slide, we ask them what they think the teacher should communicate about. And it was on a linear scale. So how important is it for your child's teacher to communicate your child's progress? So you can see the things they found that were most important were progress, effort and engagement, behavior, and grades, okay? And then the things they rated kind of in the middle, how to use the technology, ways to further support learning, and ways to get in contact with the teacher. And the thing that they found least helpful as far as communication goes is information about the teacher, his or herself. So they don't really care about our learning or teaching style. That was least important to them.
So right when we went on remote instruction back on March 16th, not on March 16th, but about a week or two later, I rolled out a remote instruction parent survey. And I borrowed this from other teachers at my site because I realized that I was doing what I thought was necessary and that I thought was fine, and basing it on my classroom practice, but needed really more information from my parents, and included things like what days to meet, what times of day would be best for my parents. And I also got some really interesting responses, went from I thought, well, maybe we don't need a live stream every day or do group chats every day. Oh no, we needed every single weekday. We needed some sort of contact, which was good because that's what I was doing, but also kind of saying, well, maybe I'm doing it too much. Maybe I'm doing it too little. Some kids aren't logging on. So it was nice to have that validation. And my second question, this actually asked, do you need training on how to use Seesaw? And the majority of my parents said no. A few said yes. And then my favorite one was, are we even using Seesaw? We don't know. I was like, okay, so that obviously I need to be clear about what we're using as part of our instruction on a daily basis, because yes, we're using Seesaw every day.
All right, so we're gonna go ahead.
I was gonna say, so obviously forms is a great way to get a hold of parents, and take it away, Krista.
Absolutely. So forms is one of my favorite features of G Suite. So the ways that I have used it in the past are for needs analysis, and I'll talk more about what that is, to maintain contact records for families, tech request forms, feedback, interest inventory. You can see the various ways that I've used it in the past. Now, let me go into a little more detail. So at the beginning of the year, even in a normal academic year, I send out a form to families within the first week of school, and I ask the student's name, if they go by a nickname, and then I try to gather all the contact information I can. And I think this year that's going to be particularly important. So you want phone numbers and emails from both parents and emergency contacts and all of that, because if a kid falls off the grid this year, we are going to want every resource we have to contact them. Maybe I want to know about their learning styles. So does your kid need to get up and move around a lot? Those are things that for a kid I don't know very well, I would like to know. And then their interests and hobbies. It's always good to let parents tell you their strengths and the kid's strengths and their areas of concern. In a normal year, traditional year, where they go after school. Do they go to BEST? Do they go to the Boys and Girls Club or EDC? That's helpful information. And then obviously emails and phone numbers and their technology needs, right? So I know my district did a really good job getting technology out in a very short amount of time in the spring. But some kids, like incoming kindergartners, for instance, may still be without a Chromebook or a hotspot. And so this is information I can gather right away to just kind of help me direct how I'm going to approach this particular class. You want to add anything to that?
I was going to bring up, and I know Josh in our chat, he also asked maybe add in how many houses that people live in, or if they go to daycare during the day, what's the context for their learning? Are they going to be doing it all at night when their parents are actually home, or are they going to be doing it at the babysitters? What's the situation for their learning? Because it may affect later on the needed supplies and location. And one of the things I do is I have my students collect their contact information because we're in 5th grade, they're a little more independent. And sometimes I get more phone numbers than I would from the parents themselves, because I get grandparents, aunts and uncles, other people around, so that and occasionally I actually do need those.
Definitely. And yeah, I think it's going to be important to have a question on there this year. Yeah, what time of day will your child be doing their schoolwork? Will they have parental support, or who will be helping them? And then that way you can kind of plan around that.
Exactly.
All right, so another way that I've used Google Forms in the past, I keep saying in a normal year, this upcoming year is not going to be normal, but I give a mid and end of year survey just to kind of help me see what's working for my students and their families, because every year is different, as you guys know. But this past year in the spring, you know, we had 2 weeks where we were teaching with distance learning. Many of us were very new to it. It was difficult. I have 4 kids, so I know it was difficult as a parent. And I did a distance learning feedback form, and I had 29 students, and I got 34 responses. So the level of engagement with that form, parents really wanted to be heard, I think, in that case. And I think they really appreciated it. So it just let me know what was working and what wasn't. And then I had the spring break to rethink how I was approaching distance learning. And it definitely helped drive my instruction for the remainder of the year. So this I do more with the students, but I think you can do it with parents too. So interest inventories, I put a big emphasis on the 40 book challenge and getting my kids to read. So I do a reading interest inventory. So asking the kids, do you like to read? How often do you read? What kind of books do you like to read? And then I start asking them about their hobbies too. Like, what do you like to do? Do you play any sports? You know, what are your hobbies? Things like that. And then that helps me at the beginning of the year to identify my non-readers, are the ones that struggle a little more than others. And by asking them what their hobbies and their interests are, I'm then able to maybe suggest appropriate reading material and hook them eventually and get them reading. But I think the same concept can be used with parents as well. Like, what are your kids into? You know, anything you want to add to that, Laura?
No, I think interest inventories are really helpful, because not only that, it helps you with goal setting, it helps you if the student's not motivated to look into how to better motivate them based on their interests. It's incredibly valuable,
Absolutely.
Okay, let me go ahead and.
All right, and then just daily check-ins or weekly check-ins with families. This is the specific form I used in the spring with my students. I posted it on Google Classroom just for a quick check-in. It can also kind of be used for attendance, you know, like, are you engaged today? And then the ones that didn't respond to the form, I reached out to them. I would email them, and, you know, if I had to, contact families. So this one just says, what's your name? How are you feeling today? Because there were a lot of emotions in the spring. And it's either I'm great, I'm okay, or I'm terrible. And then what's one thing you can focus on in your life that's positive? That's the third question down there. And then the last one, is there anything I can do today to support you? So it's just one way to keep in touch with them and see how they're doing emotionally.
So, a couple of comments. Tochi, I hope I said your name correctly, said that the interest form also helps you build relationships, and that's going to be incredibly important this year, because we don't have that opportunity to make the face-to-face connections. We don't get to observe them as we walk around the classroom, overhear conversations, then build into that. We have to be very direct in how we build relationships this year. And then another person also said, can you schedule the daily check-in form to go out every day? And like, yes, you can. In Google Classroom, you can schedule your form to go out every day. I had a check-in form as well that was first name, last name. Also collected their email. How are you feeling today? What do you need anything? And that also just kind of helped me. And I also the comment, anything you want me to know. So I found everything from like, I got a hamster, to like, I need breakfast, and all sorts of things. between, and I could start to target if it was a serious need, or I need help on my homework. Okay, that's, I know exactly what to ask you about when you come to meet that day. So you can definitely schedule it to go out every single day. And I think we might even, we could probably touch on that when we go to Google Classroom for sure. But yes, you can schedule it. You can't necessarily schedule it. You have to schedule every single instance. It won't be an automatic necessarily. You're gonna have to go in and physically schedule them. All right.
Okay, and then this one is, I call it a needs analysis, and this can be used in various ways. I know my admin has used it for tech, like tech data collection. Our PTA uses it to find out what teachers want and need. But I plan to use it this year just to kind of see, what do you need? What materials are you lacking? Because as we know, some kids aren't going to have crayons. Some kids aren't going to have pencil and paper. So I want to know that information so I can do whatever I have to do to get them those materials. So this is a needs analysis, this specific one for materials, tech distribution, and then you can also use it for instructional support. So my kid isn't going to be able to join the Google Meet at this time. Can you meet with him at a different time, or, whatever? You can modify it how you see fit.
Tech support, my kid's Chromebook isn't working all of a sudden, and all of those types of things. So that takes us to sheets. Unless, Krista, do you have anything else you wanted to say about forms?
No, I'm good.
All right, so every single form that you create can create a sheet. So you have to go into the actual form, and across the top when you go to responses, there's an option to select right at the top that says create a Google Sheet. Once you create that Google Sheet, you can then manipulate the data, you can play around with it, you can try all sorts of different things with it. And one of the things I came across, and to be honest, I haven't completely used this in the classroom yet, but I'm going to this year, because when you set up a form, like a needs form, or you're going to get responses, and they may come in when you're not necessarily checking that form for responses. You might get one over a long holiday weekend, and you're not necessarily going to be going in to go look for those things. With this resource, with FormMule, and there's a link here, and we're going to share the slides with you at the end, so that way you can click on the link and go to the tutorial. But FormMule allows you to basically if you're collecting parent email addresses as part of your form, you can then send them an email automatically. But more importantly, and this is what I really wanted to be able to do, is send myself an email telling me that I have a response. So I can put my email up here instead of in the CC box. I would put my email in the to box, and all I had to do was basically just put in my email. And every single time someone puts in a response, I'll get an email, and then I can put in the first name, last name, and I could put in how in this case I used my daily check-in to create this template, but I could have them put in, I need blank, and it would come and it would show up in the body of the email. So I would get an email saying, first off, I have a response, and secondly, that my response, this is what's needed. So when I have parents who are filling out a form middle of the year, and I kind of forgot to actually put that out there for them, this way I'll get an email saying, hey, you have a parent response on this form, and this is what it said. So it's a nice little like, ping, this is what you need to do. So that's one neat aspect of form within forms. So, and I can also send back regularly, in high school, this would be a great opportunity too, to like send, if like your student submitted a form, you can have generate an email to those students saying, thanks for your response, or you can have a prefab form basically going out with more information based on what they responded with. So, and it can do it automatically with each response, or you can have it do it all at once. If you're doing an event of some kind, like, and you had parents volunteer for something and you want to send out one mass response, you could do it that way as well. So FormMule is a really powerful tool. It does ask for a lot of permissions, and I was one of the few times I've read through an entire privacy policy all the way through, and just because I want to know exactly what they were asking for before I gave it permission to do things because I felt like, I was like, this is a lot that you're asking of my Google Drive. I don't know if I really want to share that with you. And then I was like, okay, no, they're really responsible for how you handle it. And they have a lot of reputable add-ons for your Google situation. Something that I have done with Sheets in the past, and I've done it for about 4 or 5 years now, is I schedule all of my parent-teacher conferences through Google Sheets. I create a very basic spreadsheet. I share it blank with all of my families and basically tell them that they can, and I make it public, viewable, and they can comment on it. So it's basically public with link, and they can comment. And parents can go in, they can click on the cell that they want, and then once they've clicked on that cell, they type in the student's name. I go ahead and add them to that link, or sometimes I've got parents who just message me and I'll add them in. But it's a live way of showing a schedule, and they can see all the updates. It's relatively private because it's just with the link, and it's been a fantastic way to do all of my parent-teacher conferences. And I'm thinking, as I go into parent office hours, regular check-ins throughout the school year, this is probably what I will end up using, again, just because I know it works and it's simple. And for me, it's simple, and for the parents, it's been pretty simple. And if a parent doesn't have Wi-Fi, last year doesn't have Wi-Fi, which has been not an issue now, but if a parent didn't respond, I would just print out a copy of it and send it home. It's a little static, but it's still there, and it still works. So just commenting on a spreadsheet. So I know that one of the biggest things parents want is progress. And I have a way of communicating progress that I've been using in my classroom this year, but it's too long for a 45-minute session. So it's its own 45-minute session tomorrow. So if you come tomorrow and join us, join me, that would be fantastic, because we're going to be talking about how to communicate progress using Google Sheets and how to share those with parents, so that only parents, the parent of that child gets to see it, not the whole class. I feel like I talked a lot. Sorry. Krista, did you want to add anything to the sheets?
No, I think you did a great job with the overview.
Just checking.
All right, let's talk about Google Classroom a little bit. So I know many of you are already using Google Classroom, so I'm going to try to make this kind of brief. At the end of these particular slides, the Google Classroom slides, you will see a tutorial, a YouTube link that I made for my class that you are welcome to use for your class. So it just kind of walks parents through the basic navigation of Google Classroom. So Google Classroom is great for pupil communication if done right. It's a place to post classwork and give feedback. You can pose questions to students, and this I've seen teachers do as a form of attendance as well. I'll talk about that a little bit in a minute. And then there's obviously the chat and the stream, and I use it to post my weekly expectations. Parents can access grades, and I duplicated pupil communication. Sorry about that. You can keep going, Laura.
How much far?
All right, so the Google Classroom stream, I like to think about that as kind of like your school social media for your students. It's a place where they will see any new assignment I've posted, or any announcements, things like that. But they can also support each other by posing questions that I might not see right away, and a classmate might. So you can see in this case, the student says, where is the meeting? They're looking for the Google Meet link, right? And his friend says, the meeting is already here, scroll down. So she got to that answer before I did. And that was really helpful, I think, for that student. So it's a good way for them to help and support each other. If you use Google Classroom and you teach older kids, you know that they might not always use school appropriate language when they're posting on the Google Classroom stream. So there is a way you can mute them. So you can go to the 3 dots on the right and then click mute that student. I hate having to do that. I've only had to do it once or twice, but it is something that you can do as the teacher.
And for the parent component in all of this, I would suggest making sure that the parents are aware that the students can ask their peers for support. So if they do get stuck on something, like, have you asked your class yet? Or, are you asking me? Kind of like the ask three before me type rule, only at home with your family. And then also making sure you tell your parents, as part of your back to school, that if your student's misbehaving, I may have to mute them, or if something's happening, if something inappropriate happens, I will kick them out of the meet. So that way, if something happens and, like, I got kicked out of the meet by my teacher, you've already set that expectation that that if this happens, there's a reason for it, not like, I just couldn't stand your kid today, so I kicked him out. Sorry.
Yeah, and I think setting that as part of your norms at the beginning of the year, this is school appropriate language and this is not, and having parents on board with that too.
Exactly, because, the last thing you want is parents coming back going like, you did this to my child, you kicked them out, you just don't like them.
All right, so classwork, and I know you guys know how to find the classwork, but this is from a parent's perspective. So this isn't the teacher's view, this is the parent or the student's view, right? So classwork is where you would want to itemize some of your stuff, keep things in folders. You can see that there's due dates there, and yeah, that's where the classwork is. You can keep going, Laura. The thing that I will be using this year that I didn't know we had access to is Guardian summaries. Now, by default, the Guardian summaries are turned off. You have to go into settings, scroll down to general, and then use your little toggle, see that little blue button in that center picture. Make sure that's turned on. And then that will automatically send a weekly update to families about what your child or what their child might be missing, and what they've already turned in, and perhaps some of the scores that they got on those.
The key thing to know here is that you have to schedule at least a week in advance. Otherwise, all they'll see is the missing work. They won't actually see what's coming up due. So you have to be a little bit ahead of yourself, because it goes out on a Friday. So if the due part hasn't been scheduled by Friday, they're not going to see that portion. They're just going to see what's missing, and it's going to be reactive instead of proactive.
Excellent point. Thank you.
And I'm not always the best at that myself, so I'm figuring these things out courtesy of online instruction.
All right, so again, this is from the student or parent's perspective. I am so sorry that first image is so blurry, but in the top left corner, they've got their 3 lines, right? So you're gonna click on that, and then they're going to go to the to-do. Can you point to that, Laura, the to-do? And then that's going to take them to the 3rd image that will show them the things they still need to do. Now, you can see that this particular student, everything in red there, that shows
Sorry.
It's okay. That shows due dates, when those assignments were due, and the fact that they are missing for the student. And then the 4th picture, if you look up at the top, you go over to done, and that shows the items that they have submitted and their scores on them. Okay. So I think it's also always important to let parents know that a student can click turn in and not have submitted anything. This happens every time an assignment is due. I go to grade them, and it says done, and it's not done. So I can, as the teacher, send that back to them, ask them to attach their assignment, and
yeah. No, I'm glad I'm not the only one who has things turned in absolutely blank and somehow expect that it's going to be totally fine with me. But this is also really good to go up with your teachers at back to school, your parents at back to school night, or having it as a little video tutorial that you can send to parents when they start asking, well, how do I know if they did their work? It's all right here. You just have to know where to look.
Right. Which is what this is. So this is my Google Classroom tutorial. You will have access to these slides. The YouTube link is there on the left that says Google Classroom tutorial for parents. Feel free to use it.
And shout out to Paul who put it into our chat already. I'm such a newbie at Zoom. I'm like, I don't want to leave this page. I'm sure Charlie could, but I don't want to leave this page because I'm afraid that something else is going to happen. So
thank you, Paul.
Paul's awesome. That's why he's, a super awesome Google innovator. All right, so Google Calendar. So when I first started this, I got excited because I was like, oh, we could use appointment slots to meet with parents. Wrong. So Google appointment slots only work if everyone has a Google account, and not all of your parents have Google accounts, and I can't guarantee that all students are going to let their parents use their Google account to schedule an appointment with their teacher, because not everyone wants their parent to meet with their teacher. Who knew? So my solution to that part is creating a Google Sheet, using the Google Sheet for parents to sign up for meets. But within the calendar aspect, and I'm doing a very detailed screenshots on all of this, because wouldn't it be nice if a parent could see all of your assignments at a glance for the month? So that way when they're looking at a week, and not just a week, they're looking at the whole month. And if they have multiple students, they can start to see where due dates might overlap. And if they have multiple students who are young and need help, they can start to go, okay, I'm gonna need to help, Susie over here. I'm gonna need to help Alondra over here. And everybody's stuff is due on Friday the 22nd. Great, okay. But they can at least game plan around that. And I just did a digital playbook training with Doug Fisher. Fantastic training. I know that Salinas City, I think you guys are getting it in like a couple weeks here. But it's fantastic. But one of the things he said was, make sure your parents can see a whole month at once. And here's how I'm going to do it. You can either you can create a new calendar by going to add. Basically, you have to go click on the cog, the gear in calendar, open up settings. That's where everything starts, and you can add a brand new calendar if you really want to. But that's a little extra work in all this. You can add a calendar, create a new calendar, give it a name, and then do all the next few steps. Or, and this is what I'm personally going to do, I'm going to use my Google Classroom calendar, because every Google Classroom has a calendar that's automatically made for it. And what that means is when I go into my calendar and I scroll down, this is my classroom last year, Miss Carrie's class. I'm going to click the 3 dots this time and click on the settings and sharing. And I'm going to make it available to the public. So I'm going to scroll down a little bit, click on make available to public. This means that it is now searchable on the web. Kind of freaked me out the first time I did it, because I was like, oh my gosh, people are going to see my Google Classroom assignments. But then I walked through it. The only thing you need to know, once you click this button, do not, ladies and gentlemen, click the Get Shareable link down here. That link will force everyone to sign in. By shareable, it means people you've shared with. It's not actually shareable with parents. There's one little step you have to go. You have to scroll all the way down to integrate calendar, which is like the last thing, and snag the public URL. So basically you make it public, and then you scroll down to integrate your calendar and use that public URL, which then gives everyone the access to this view of your web. You can also see month, week, month agenda, but it gives them this view of your calendar. But all they can see is the description of what the assignment. They don't get to see any of the documents. They don't get to see anything else. All they see is what to do Friday. And this is a really fun Friday because this was the day of destruction. We played online Battleship to talk about coordinate graphing. It was fantastic. But my parents will now be able to see it. They can scroll through, see what was, and I'm trying to scroll on a static screen. They can see everything that I have assigned for that day on Friday. They can't see anything else, but they can see at least my agenda for the day for the students. So I don't know, I think it's a really powerful tool to be able to hand our parents a month's glance. And I can also add events to my calendar. So whatever I assign in classroom, and it's only the assignments. It's not announcements. And it's only for whole class assignments. So if I assign something to my RSP students, if I assign something to a small group, those assignments do not show up on that master calendar. So if I did colony reports in small groups. So I had groups of 3 to 4 students and they each had their own assignment essentially. For that assignment, I would need to add it as an event on my calendar because those assignments will not show up on the master calendar for parents. So in order to do that, I would just go to my regular calendar, create the event like I would normally, but instead of making it on my personal school calendar, I would click on this and select my Miss Carrie's class Google Class calendar. All right, I'm gonna pause for a second. Anybody else have any other questions on this one before I move on? Because we're gonna move on fast because we are 13 minutes and counting, or probably less now.
All right, Laura, I'm gonna share my screen. It says
okay, go for it.
Stable right now. All right, can you see my slides?
Yes, we can.
All right. Okay, so I'm going to show you my class website, and then I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the features of Google Sites. Now, this is my new obsession. I think this is going to be a game changer for me with distance learning. I would strongly urge you guys to at least give this a try. So this is my homepage, right? So you can see here that I have my weekly schedule, and this was the last week of school. That's the most recent one I have. So obviously these assignments are not similar, or they're not normal. This was the last week of school. So it, all of these assignments would be hyperlinked, so it takes the kids directly to the assignments or directly to the Google Meet, etc. Okay, so it's all their must-dos and their may-dos. And then you scroll down. By the way, I made this with a Google slide, and my friend Paul, who's on here right now, he mentioned last night that, you know, a theory why teachers don't use Google Sites is because it's a lot of maintenance. It's one more thing we have to do. So if you use things that are already in your Google Drive, it will automatically update on your Google site. So it's actually pretty easy to keep it maintained. So I update this every week. And so once I update it, my parents and my students are just going to see this week's schedule. All right, and then if I scroll down, you can also link slideshows or YouTube videos. Okay, so that's my homepage. I want to show you up here at the top, there's this announcement banner, and this you can get to by going to settings, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute. Going to settings, and then anything that's urgent that you want to really pop out, you're going to put in your announcement banner. So obviously school starts August 10th. Be sure to bookmark this page for future reference, okay? So I want my parents to be able to see that. Another page that I have is the schedule, and it's going to be a bit repetitive because it's my weekly schedule, but down at the bottom, I also have a schedule that I imported from my Google Classroom. Now, nothing is due this week, but if I go back to, let's say, the beginning of May, here's all the assignments that my students had along with their due dates, and these are linked. So the kids or the parents can link or click on these links and it will take them to those assignments. Super cool feature, and it's something that you don't really have to maintain. One less thing to worry about. Assignments, you want to jump in, Laura? Go ahead.
Just a little pro tip. Open up a Google Chrome incognito window and open up your website in it. So as you're publishing your website, you can see what has public access and what still needs permissions. So that way you can see if it's, you don't have permission to see this, because that's the last thing you want your parents to see is nothing but you don't have permission to see this. So.
Excellent tip. Yeah, definitely. Okay, so another page I have on mine is assignments. So this is going to be like my major assignments. I don't want to update this all the time. And we typically do kind of the same projects. We modify them, but these are just some exemplars. So I might post templates or directions. Our big project at my school for the third trimester is the STEAM project. So this is just the directions to it. And then this is an exemplar. That's my son's. So I knew I had permission to share that. All right. And then I want to thank Mr. Cogswell, who is also on this call, for this tip. So communicating student progress, he is kind enough to share this form. If you go to coachben.org, under forms. This is a Google sheet that he created, and it's a weekly thing that I would update. And basically you have a check mark or an X, and parents can quickly see what their students have done and what they have not done. Super helpful. You can do your students' initials here, or you can do their student numbers, which would be a little bit more anonymous, so other parents don't see other kids' grades. Do you want to say something, Laura? Go ahead.
Come tomorrow. We're going to talk more about this tomorrow. Okay.
Yes. And she'll show you how to do this. All right, and then I have my expectations page here. So these are our school rules. We follow the 3 R's, but I also included a YouTube video about our school's PBIS system and what our behavior expectations and rewards are. Another feature of Google Sites is called buttons. And if I can get this to switch pages. So buttons are like a really tiny way to include or to give a lot of information. So these are all the 5th grade standards, and I've linked these buttons to take my families to the different locations where you can find standards. So here are all the 5th grade math standards, right? I also have, the new art standards, which many people I have found don't know we have. They are fairly new. Check out this link, our new computer science standards, next generation, and so on. So buttons are a great way to, like I said, it takes up a little bit of space on your page, but it's a ton of information. Another page I have are STEM activities. So with distance learning, you've got your kids that finish everything super fast. So here's some activities that they could potentially do at home. Okay. And same thing with this page. These are art activities. Laura, how am I doing on time? Am I running out of time?
We're like 2 minutes away right now.
I'm gonna go super fast, guys. So again, art links, guided tutorials, and down at the bottom, I wanted to point this out. This is called an image carousel. So I can post pictures. You have to have at least 2 to do a carousel, but post pictures of past art projects. Okay. And then I have a page for my links and my class codes. So we use Epic, we use Seesaw, we use, all these different things. This is a great place to just have those codes in case the kids forget them. And then I always tell parents about Mr. Hobbecker, who's a great math resource. And then my contact page. All right, Laura, if you want to.
I'm going to split the screen just for a second. We're going to kind of jump to the end. The only thing we didn't cover right now was Google Meets, but I know that since we're all coming from districts that are very Google Meet friendly, I'm not totally sure that there's a whole lot that we would need to cover, other than I'm looking forward to doing back to school nights, doing family nights throughout the year, being able to do a lot of having students present through Google Meets. So that way they're also able to engage with their parents and share things as well. So, and I have like a little tip and trick in here on like basically sharing just your Chrome tab. So that way parents get to see just your presentation and hear you talking, as opposed to being able to see your screen and them. Like you can still see your parents and you can still see your presentation. I think that was the key tip or trick in that one right there. And with exactly 5:45 on the dot right now, thank you all for joining us.
Thank you very much for being here.
Please make sure, I'm going to drop the feedback link into the chat, if I can find the chat again, because I somehow lost it, don't know how. All right, there we go. So there's the feedback link right there. It's a tiny URL. We would love to get feedback, since this is not our day job at all.
Not at all.
We're 5th grade teachers at the core, so, but we really appreciate y'all spending Thursday night with us. Yeah, and if you have any questions, we will take questions right now, and we can probably stop the the Facebook Live at this point, so that way if you guys want to pop on and say hi and talk, you guys can totally do that while we're finishing up here.